So talks about armor stripping have been floating around for a minute. A pretty good YouTuber named Gamble did a hour-long video talking about it. I personally have not watched too much of it, but I've been seeing it float around for a little bit. Obviously, we've had some LOS changes. Ember's Fire Blast finally got, like, actually buffed. For some reason, it also scaled off of FOV, which I don't have to say is insane that it has, like, so many checks, if it hits or not, that it scaled off of FOV too, but whatever. And then they broke mag for a minute, where it gathered everybody from everywhere, which would be funny as an augment, but obviously is a little too overpowered, as it's just a very, very, very hard CC. But armor changes were being talked about. We're also getting a status, like, rework, kind of. But I really want to focus on the armor thing, because when I made, a few videos will get, like, the crop up saying, well, you don't need armor stripping. Armor stripping isn't useful. Which, if you don't want to shoot something, or if you want to use unique weaponry, then yes, you have to armor strip. So, the Sobek, I have a Riven for it. I also have a few other fun things going for it. I projectile speed multi-shot. I shoot 18 pellets. This is what I'm using: acid shells, point blank hell, savvy, toxic barrage, frigid blast. Obviously, I need to format this again. I need to get primary adapter, whatever. It hits a nice 7k per projectile, which is pretty good. But armor has been very, very all or nothing. You either deal minimal damage on, obviously this is 160 steel path, and obviously I'm using, like, Hellstrom, so it's applying, like, heat. I'm using fire roll and all of that, and I'm still not doing a lot. Even with pillage, you can see that this is nearly like a 90-ish% reduction, and shooting it still doesn't give me the results. However, I'm going to press pillage once more, fully armor strip, and chunk more HP, and obviously acid shells will go nutty, which is insane. Armor stripping is extremely, like, quality of life based. Obviously, we have pillage, we have Uneru, even if I have it equipped here, just caustic blast, which also buffs operator, but that's entirely different conversation. So for some reason, we're having this very, very, it's all or nothing approach to armor, which is insane, because people, when they recommend using pillage, they casually, for some reason, just say, hey, just get 400 strength or build for 323, if I'm correct. Which, yeah, again, people say armor stripping isn't necessary, but I'm not talking about whether it's necessary or not here. I'm talking about the fact that you either have armor strip or you don't. Which is what the supposed changes are going to fix, where it's, like, more incremental based, because we have multiple versions of armor strip in the game. We have ability armor strip, which is your pillage, your terrify, whatever. We have corrosive armor strip, which can't get to 100% unless you use Archon shards, the Emerald Archon shards, which I run on Saren, because being able to hit, like, 40 plus enemies, rapidly stacking damage, all armor stripped, is insane. It's just baseline insane. We have technically magnetic because of shield delay, which they're buffing here and there. They're looking into it, which could be really good as well. But heat also does it, all that kind of stuff. But if you're not 100% armor stripping an enemy, you don't really notice anything. You'll notice, like, some of my numbers here will go up. Like, or instead of doing, like, what, 42 here, I'll hit for, like, 489. But if I just armor strip them again, I hit for 4k. But if you're looking at the bar, it suspiciously looks like they only have 10% armor left. Like, this drain on my pillage is 72%, so roughly they would have, like, 28% armor left. So the 28% that's left is roughly an 100 times increase. But if I hit it again, it goes from 1 to 100 to 1 to 1000, which is a gigantic leap, and it doesn't really make sense. And that's not even factoring in, like, corrosion or anything of that sort. Even, like, partial stacks will change the damage. Let's see if I can't get a rocket from Nautilus here. Yeah, like even this has partial, and it's only a 30% increase despite heat having like around 50% shred. So this really weird, plus look, even with the 28% remaining after a pillage and the 50% from heat, the way the calculation works, it's still leaving some armor. So overall, like, is the buff unnecessary? Maybe. However, anything that quality of life's the game is massive. It's genuinely very, very well appreciated, because you either armor strip or you don't. You either use Incarnon weapons, which break the game regardless because their base damage is so high. There's some that aren't good. For example, the Bran or the Paris Prime. I use the Paris Prime. Those aren't good Incarnon weapons because they just kind of, their base damage is extremely low. But things like the Torrid, which it's so, like, I'm not even going to armor strip with this thing. Let me see where I threw it. There it is. Like, I'm not even going to armor strip with this thing. This thing is genuinely just insanely good. No viral procs or anything like that. And it just shreds through enemies. Like, obviously, I'm using corrosion on it. But this is one of the strongest weapons in the game right now. Even without armor stripping. Yeah, obviously corrosion doesn't like fully strip on my Harrow because I'm not committing the emerald shards to it, but the base damage of it is so insanely high that it shreds through things. So the quality of life change for this armor strip is going to come at some point. I've seen people talking about it here and there. It's kind of picking up wind here, downstream somewhere else. So honestly, it'll just be nice to see, because at some point, yeah, we were going to have the discussion of how many things are we going to throw at the wall until we realize that we have too many different modifiers for armor. Like, the original change for it to be less about, like, it is a gigantic pool that you can take from. Like, Mag's Polarize is still not a really good ability, mainly because it deals a damage to their armor. Like, it still has its old effect, despite the fact that we moved away from numbers to, like, percentages. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see what the armor changes will be, because it'll be a lot better than what we have here, which is, I have a 50% from heat, because it innately does that. I have the armor strip from pillage, which should be 72%. So you'd think adding that up would be 122%, but it's not. It still leaves them with like 10 to 20% armor, which makes no sense, other than the fact that the way the calculations work is probably, I subtract guaranteed 72% from their base armor. That base armor becomes 28%, and then the heat instead will do 50% to that value instead of the maximum value, meaning they still have 14% armor. That's obviously not including like calculations for like corrosion or anything else like that, which is kind of dumb. It's kind of a little weird, ain't it? That's a strange thing for calculations to be caught up on, so I'm glad that we're ironing these things out, although, again, it's been a little late because the main meta is viral slash, so you just viral something, slash it, and then just it dies through the armor anyway. A lot of high tier weapons are just bypassing the armor or shield or anything like that. Like, that's all endgame is just bypassing the armor, because what's the point of dealing normal damage at this, right? So yeah, just throwing that out there, because I was testing the Sobek and noticed that my damage numbers were wildly different, even though they really shouldn't be, but that's how percentages work, I guess.